If you're watching this video, that means you're trying to learn how to be a better sports bettor. And you've probably seen a bunch of videos on social media about people claiming to be experts who sell picks or tell you to blindly follow them because they just want your money. Now, we've learned a lot over the last few years from industry professionals, and it's gotten to the point where I want to make a series of videos with the information I wish I knew when I first started betting, and so I am. So not only are we going to talk about the basics of sports betting, but more so the fundamental concepts of how to approach betting, things you should be thinking about to make good bets and avoid bad ones. And if you can do that, you'll find yourself, again, making good bets, which means you're winning more money, and you'll quickly see how your betting skills are improved compared to those you know. Now, before we hop into anything, the first thing we have to talk about when we're trying to learn about sports betting is how are lines made, because this is something that most people do not understand, and there is a ton of misinformation out there because of this. And you'll constantly see people talk about, oh, Vegas is rigged, or the sports books have to fix it, or Vegas always knows. None of that is actually true. And once you learn how lines are made, you'll see why that's so ridiculous. Okay, so to talk about this, we have to start with the fundamental basics, and that is that there are two types of sports books out there. There are market maker books and retail books. Now, the retail books are the ones that you're familiar with. These are the DraftKings, Caesars, FanDuel's, BetMGM, ESPN Bet, etc. Pretty much if you've seen a commercial for it, it's a retail book. Now, the other types of books are market maker books. And those are the books like BetCris, Pinnacle, and Circa. And so the key difference between these two is how they operate and who they allow to bet there. So let's start with the market maker books, because the market maker books are the ones who actually set the lines and move them throughout the week. So to go through this, let's look at an example. We'll deal with the NFL first, okay? So NFL lines are actually opening up Sunday the week before the game is played. And so what happens is you get a line that opens up, and you allow bettors, or market maker books allow bettors to bet on that throughout the week all the way to kickoff. And so when the line first opens up, let's say the 49ers are playing the Panthers. And so really what's happening is the sports book, the market maker book is just throwing up a random guess, essentially. They have power ratings and some sort of, it's an educated guess, but it's a guess. And they're just opening that line up. And they say 49ers are -1 favorites over Panthers, which means -1, they have to win by 1 or more. If they win by 1, it's a push. If they win by more than 1, your bet wins, right? And so they'll say 49ers -1. A bettor will come in and say, oh, I love that bet. I will bet that for as much money as you allow me, please. Then the market maker book says, okay, I'll take that bet. Clearly it was a good one, so I'm going to move it to 49ers -2. Now they have to win by 2 points or more for you to either push or win. Somebody comes again and says, hey, I love that bet. I'll take it for as much as you allow me to bet. The market maker book says, okay, take their money, move it to -3. And this process keeps happening until you get bets on the other side. So let's say, hypothetically, it's the 49ers -9 now. So someone may say, that's too many points. I want the Panthers +9. And so the sportsbook says, okay, I'll take that bet. And then maybe they move it down to 49ers -8. And so this sort of this bidding war process happens from the moment a line opens up all the way until kickoff. And this process is called price discovery, and it's very, very important to understand what's happening there. That's how lines are set, and that's why lines move. It's through a process called price discovery, and it only happens at the market maker books. Okay, so why is that important? Now, earlier I said when someone bets money on it, the market maker book will move the line. Well, that's not entirely true. The market maker books only moves the line based off action of certain bettors. And those bettors are what they deem sharp bettors. So not all bettors are created equal. Market maker books do a really good job at profiling every person who bets with them. They know how sharp they are, how good they are, etc. And so if a sharp bettor says, hey, I like the 49ers, the market maker book will respect that and then move the line. Think about it like this. If you had two friends and you asked them, hey, who should I bet on this game? And your one friend who studies football for a living says, bet on team A. And your other friend who's never watched a game of football in their life says, bet on team B. who would you listen to? That's exactly what the market maker books are doing by profiling their players. They know who's going to be right more often, and they listen to them and move the line accordingly. Now, what happens here is, so in this example, even if a sharp bettor bets on the 49ers and a non-sharp bettor bets on the Panthers in this example, the sportsbook will still take both people's money and they'll still move the line from 49ers -1 to 49ers -2 because they respect the sharp bettor's opinion more than the non-sharp bettor, regardless of the amount of money being placed. Well, you may be thinking, well, hey, if the market maker books know they have a bad line and they know the sharp bettors can exploit it, why would they lose so much money in this process? Why don't they just come up with better lines to begin with? And the reality is they're not losing that much money because they place limits earlier on. So remember, I said that the lines open up for NFL the week before the game is played. And so on that previous Sunday, you may be only able to bet a couple of $100s on a game. And then by Wednesday, you can bet maybe a couple of thousand. And then by Sunday, you're able to bet tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on who you are, on any game. And so when the books do this process, they limit these bets early and they're exchanging money for information, because the more information they get from these sharp bettors, the quicker they can get to a good line where there's sort of an equilibrium of action on both sides, which means by the time the limits open all the way up, they're going to have a pretty good action distribution on both sides of it. Not necessarily 50-50, but fairly close to that. Not one side is being dominated by the sharps. You're going to essentially divide the sharp community where you're going to see either action on both sides or not a lot of action at all, and that's how they know they have a good line. Okay, so now that we know how the lines are made at the market maker, let's talk about the retail sports books, i.e. the apps that you're using. So the retail books is very simple. All they do is copy the line from the market maker books. That's it. They pay money to get this data and then use those lines to make their own lines. And so the key difference with the retail sports book is that they profile their players and they kick out anybody who is sharp, or they severely limit them. When I say severely limit, I mean they only may be able to bet $20, $10, sometimes $2, and that's it, right? And so they effectively have no sharp bettors in their pool. And that's very important because the retail books are relying on their clientele not being sharp. And we're going to talk a lot about that in the next video, because this is how they make their money. Now, I want to say one quick thing. If you've been paying attention, you'll remember that the lines start off on Sunday, the week before, an NFL game is played, and it moves throughout the week, and the limits increase throughout the week. What does that mean for you? If the retail books are just copy and pasting the market maker books, well, that means that you should be betting early in the week, not waiting until Sunday morning or Saturday night to make your NFL bets. Because by the time you make the bets then, the sharp community has already gone through all those lines and sucked out all the value. If you're betting on Sunday and Monday for the following week, you're going to find a lot more value than if you're waiting until kickoff or Sunday morning. And this little thing, especially when you're first starting off betting, can mean all the difference in the world in terms of how many bets you win, how many bets you lose, and of course, how much money that you're making. So the final point I want to make about price discovery. Why is this so important for you as a bettor? Because again, the misinformation. So let's kind of walk through a scenario, kind of putting all these pieces together. Now remember, I said at retail books, they only move the lines when market makers move it. They're copying their lines from the market maker. So if the line does not move at the market maker, it's not going to move at the retail book. So what does that mean? That means that the sharp community is saying, hey, at 49ers -8, there's no more value here because either no one's betting on it or sharps are betting both sides of it at a somewhat equal enough rate that the market maker books feels pretty comfortable leaving that number there because it's not being dominated on one side. Now, what about the retail books? So let's say Mattress Matt comes in and he's looking at this game. He says, I want to put $1 million on 49ers -8. And DraftKings says, okay, we'll take your bet. Well, again, because they didn't move at the market maker, DraftKings will leave the line at -8, even though now they have more money on the 49ers than they may have on the Panthers. So let's say Dave Portnoy hears about this and he goes, hey, I want $1,000,000 on 49ers minus 8 too. Well, again, DraftKings will say, all right, I'll take your bet, and they'll leave the line there at minus 8. So now, though, they have a pretty significant interest. They want the 49ers to not cover because now they have a lopsided balance on the 49ers compared to what they do with the Panthers. Because again, they can't move the lines because all they're doing is copying it from the market makers, and the market makers are not moving it. And so you see this all the time when you hear people say, oh, there's so much money on this team. The sports books really need, X team to lose tonight, or, the sports books are all in on this thing. It'd be a bad day if so-and-so team wins. And that's all retail books. That's not market makers. Those are retail book managers saying that. And so when people hear this, they say, oh, the fix is in. Vegas needs, so-and-so team. So watch, that team's going to lose outright or something crazy like that. And then when these teams don't cover, so again, our example, let's say the 49ers win by 7 points, not 8. So all those bets on 49ers minus 8 have now lost. Well, people will say, see, I told you it's rigged. And that's not true. The retail books, the reason that they put themselves in this situation where they have these lopsided handles or, a lot more money on one team versus the other and don't adjust is because at that point, remember, there are no sharp bettors in the retail book atmosphere. And so what the retail books are saying is, hey, if I'm taking your $1 million bet or whatever it may be, I know you're not a sharp bettor. I know you don't have an edge. So I'm willing to take your money, and I'm willing to bet that overall you will lose more money to me than you'll win. And the reason that is because sports betting is hard. People don't win a lot more often than they lose. Now, there's also a really key difference to this because of what we call the hold, which we'll talk about in the next video. It doesn't mean that this person is going to lose that bet every single time. It just means that in the long run, they're going to lose more than they'll win. And that's how the retail sports books make their money. And the final thing to remember about this, remember, Vegas doesn't exist in the form that people talk about, right? When you hear these quotes about, oh, the book needs such and such team to win tonight, that's always a quote from one sports book. That doesn't represent all sports books. They're all independent. They all are taking different bets and have different money distribution. So, this idea that Vegas knows or that Vegas is that, it's not true. These are individual entities, individual sports books with their own individual liabilities. And the reason they're willing to put themselves in these positions is because the sharp community is saying, there's really no edge to be had. And if the sharp community is saying there's a 50-50 shot that both teams will cover, then they know the people who are betting on there are just guessing, and they're willing to take those odds because over a large amount of bets, they know they're going to come out on top because these bettors will lose more than they'll win. Now, this whole conversation about, how much action the sports books want and what their sort of tolerance is much more nuanced than this. But for the time being, this is good enough for your basic foundation of how the process works. We will talk more about this in the future videos, but we have to talk about some other topics first for this conversation to really make a lot of sense. So now that we know how lines are made and the two different types of sports books that exist, we can now talk about how to bet on these games. And we're going to talk about what odds are, how to convert them to implied probabilities, and why the break-even percentage is so important for your chances of winning and making smart bets. All right, hope this content helps. If you like this type of stuff, please let us know by giving us a like and a subscribe, and we'll be giving out more videos. All right, as always, good luck.